Christie, you are a lawyer. This is something incredibly novel right now, to essentially task private citizens with enforcing a law.
Listen, the law is novel, but as a lawyer, we need to understand this is part of the problem when you have result-oriented people who want judges that way. The Supreme Court justices are following the law. They didn't have standing to bring this. They said, we're not going to decide it now. Come back to us later when you have standing. That's the way the law works. And if this were going in the other direction, against people who are progressives or liberals, and the court was taking action without standing to do something that they disagreed with, they'd be disagreeing with that. Here's what I think we need to do. We need to have an honest conversation about abortion in this country. There is obviously a lot of discontent in many, many states across the country with Roe versus Wade. And as long as we don't have an honest conversation about whether this really is a federal constitutional right or not, we're not going to be able to resolve this issue. What you're going to have are laws like Texas that look to jerry-rig statutes to get around Roe versus Wade. So let's have an honest conversation.
Heidi, what do you make, Chris? What about that argument? And it was the Wall Street Journal was making a similar argument, the precedent this sets to have private individuals doing this.
Look, again, George, I think it's you're because people aren't following the law and doing things in a cogent way, you get laws like this, who are trying to jerry-rig around Roe versus Wade, which in my view, as not only as someone who's pro-life, but also as someone who's a lawyer.
But can you support a law like that?
Listen, what I support is an honest conversation about abortion in this country. And the fact is, the much more significant case, quite frankly, in this Texas case, is the Mississippi case.
One.
Because the Mississippi case is following the law the way it's supposed to go, and it's going to put a 15-week ban in front of the Supreme Court. And again, remember how Roe versus Wade was decided. Out of nowhere, the United States Supreme Court decides that first trimester is not to be protected, and they're moving forward. Science has changed so much since then. And what Kristen's talking about, I would argue, too, that one of the reasons why you're seeing a decline in abortion is because of the increase in science and how much more people know about viability. And when they know that, they're much more appalled by the act of abortion than they were back in 1973.
Here's Chris Christie twisting himself into pretzels to try and justify the Supreme Court's decision to allow the Texas 6-week abortion ban to stand, functionally gutting Roe v. Wade and a woman's right to a safe and legal abortion in the United States. Chris Christie rose to power in New Jersey for being this no BS figure. Now the guy is falling over himself to justify a hack SCOTUS decision that undermines 50 years of precedent because he likes that it aligns with his personal political ideology. But sure, real straight shooter. Now, Christie is leaning heavily on the idea that this case wasn't decided on the merits, but instead that the court refused to block the law from going into effect for procedural issues. But 2 points here. First, the functional effect of this law is that abortion will be outlawed before most women know they're pregnant. If the court respected its own precedent, as opposed to its new conservative majority's theocratic ideology, it would recognize that by allowing the law to stand, the constitutional right afforded in Roe v. Wade has been gutted. So again, we can fall over ourselves pretending that this wasn't about the merits of Roe, but in the Supreme Court failing to block it, it effectively did make a decision on the merits, and that decision completely and totally guts Americans' constitutional right to a safe and legal abortion. Second, the law was written specifically so that it would subvert the will of the court by placing enforcement not in the hands of the state, but rather in the hands of individuals. In other words, SCOTUS not only allowed, but rewarded an underhanded effort to undermine the court and its precedent. And by the way, what we're left with now is an entirely new precedent in the United States, where any hot-button political issue can be litigated in the streets, with neighbors pitted against neighbors and ratting each other out for cash bounties. You've got Republicans screeching on a daily basis about the communist Democrats, all while implementing a Soviet-style nanny state against its own constituents. But hey, freedom, or something. Chris Christie then goes on to say, we have to have an honest conversation about abortion in this country because there's a lot of discontent in the states. First of all, of every hot button issue right now, abortion is actually at the bottom of that list. 70% of Americans want Roe to stand, and that includes 68% of Catholics. So if Chris Christie thinks that every issue with even tepid support from the right deserves to be enacted in Republicans' favor, then I'm sorry, but the guy has zero interest in democracy. And second of all, if you're not happy with abortion, and I hope you're sitting down for this one, don't get one. It's not hard. If you don't like gay marriage, don't get gay married. If you don't like vegan burgers, you don't have to eat them. Something that you don't like merely existing is not an affront to your freedoms, but you taking that thing away from everyone else just because you don't agree with it, is an affront to everyone else's freedoms. But the most disingenuous point is Christie pretending that the decline in abortions in the US is the result of people getting appalled by the act of abortion, which isn't even close to being based in fact. In reality, while abortions in the US declined by 19% over the last decade, the reason is that pregnancies also declined. From 2011 to 2017, births dropped by 98,000, while abortions dropped by 196,000. That isn't the result of some nationwide religious reckoning. On the contrary, the number of Americans identifying as belonging to the church has actually fallen below a majority for the first time ever. And Chris Christie pretending that it is goes to show just how desperate he is to defend what is otherwise utterly indefensible. And by the way, there is a reason that Republicans aren't touching this thing with a 10-foot pole. And that's because they know that it's an egregious instance of government overreach, made only more absurd given the fact that it's from a party that falls over itself to brand itself against big government. Not to mention that it's aggressively unpopular with people on both sides of the political spectrum. So these Republicans might be celebrating behind closed doors and then trotting out people like Chris Christie to talk in circles about how actually this thing that definitely happened isn't what it seems, even though it clearly is. But the rest of us clearly know better. And we should hammer this home every last day between now and midterms, because this right here is the danger of allowing Republicans to take power anywhere. They are not accountable to Americans. They're not even accountable to majorities in their own party that support Roe. They are only accountable to the fringes of their party. The people who listen to Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon and Donald Trump, who want this country to turn into a white Christian ethno-state and will stop at nothing to achieve that, even if that means that an entire population will be deputized to rat out their neighbors for cash rewards for not following their theocratic edicts. This isn't just dangerous, it's not just unpopular, it is aggressively un-American. So two things need to happen. First, Senate Democrats need to wake up and eliminate the filibuster so that they can A, pass legislation codifying Roe, and B, pass the For the People Act, which bans partisan gerrymandering so that we can have elected officials who aren't only pandering to the farthest right's constituents in districts drawn specifically so that Democrats don't have a chance at winning. And second, the rest of us need to stay engaged and turn out like never before. Because unless the Republican Party is repudiated, they will not learn. They won't change their behavior. They need to face consequences for their actions. And with a court system that clearly isn't interested in defending the Constitution, the responsibility to save us falls on ourselves at the ballot box. If you enjoyed that video and you're looking for a deeper dive, check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. It's a no BS look at the top stories of the week, along with interviews with the top names in politics, like Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Katie Porter, Pete Buttigieg, and more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts. Also, if you want to see more videos like this one, click the subscribe link right here on this screen to join the more than 1 million people who've already subscribed to my channel. And finally, to donate to my Don't Be a Mitch fund, where I'm raising money for a whole raft of different voter outreach and voter registration groups in the closest states ahead of midterms in 2022, including Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Texas. You can find that link on this screen as well. Thanks for watching.